All right, and we are recording. Hey, everybody, this is Halona Black, your happy writing coach. And today's a special day because it is my 8-year travel, my 8-year travel versary. That's what I'm calling it. My 8-year happy travel versary. I celebrated with a little bit of a treat. If you're on my Substack, you may have seen this photo on my notes. I don't know if you can see it, but that is a lovely cinnamon roll that I had today. I actually made this little graphic here. Well, I don't think you can see the top, but the top says Happy Travelversary. And I put a little candle in the middle with the wonders of AI. But yeah, today's my 8-year travel versary, and I'm so excited about it because this is a life that um I didn't know that this was a life that I could have, but it was always in the back of my mind. Like I'm 49. I just turned 49 this past May. Um, and I just turned 49 in May. And I think there was always been a part of me that has always really loved culture and travel, but it was always, people always told me, forget about that kind of stuff. That stuff isn't important. You need to work. You're supposed to work. You're Black women are supposed to work. You don't have time to have silly dreams of traveling the world and learning new things. And you're supposed to get yourself, some marketable skills and you're supposed to work. This is I like to take some what is this, lavender essential oil and put it on the bottom of my nose. It helps to make me feel calm. I like it. But I was talking about, yeah, you're as a Black woman, you're supposed to get marketable skills, get yourself a job. You do that for 30, 40, 50 years. And then you retire, and then you're allowed to go outside and travel, for the few weeks, months, maybe even a couple of years that you still got left of halfway decent health before get sick and your health declines and you live in hell for 20 years, or you can just drop dead. And that's really how a lot of what happens for a lot of people. But I have managed to sort of, what's the word that I want to use? I've missed it. I gave myself a way to be able to opt out of that type of a life. Um, and I'm happy that I did because I'm a better human being for it. And all those people who told me that I was crazy as hell, that I was too old to be bothered with what it is that I was doing. And I was for, if you are wondering how old I was 41 when I left the US. I was quite sick. But what happened was that the actual leaving of the United States actually helped to fix my health. So here I am 8 years later. I'm 100 pounds lighter. Um, I am not depressed. I am working in my purpose. Um, and I've lived in 10 countries. I've lived in 10 countries since 2018. Isn't that amazing? I've been to more countries before that, but I've actually lived since 2018 in 10 countries, which is something not a lot of people can say. And so I'm proud of that. I think I counted it total. I've been to 18 countries in my 49 years of life. And I know that I have friends living in a life of permanent travel. You meet a lot of other people who are also travelers, and a lot of them are on country 80, 90, 100 plus. And I believe there's 195 countries in the world. So I have been saying that I need to pick up the pace, pick up the pace. I've been on a slow, sort of like a slow travel journey. I spend anywhere from from 2 to 3 months in one country to a few years. Um, and I rather like it that way. I live in Playa del Carmen, Mexico right now, and I want to move. I have to move out of this town. Playa del Carmen is a lovely place. It's just not for me to be able to stay here long term. And so I've been saying that I wanted to move to San Miguel de Allende. I've been saying that for a long time. But I actually think I'm going to go back on that statement and return to a decision that I know I made during the first trip that I made, first solo trip that I made to Mexico back in 2016-ish. When I visited here, I came to Mexico for 30 days, and that was sort of like a trial test that I did to be able to see if um, if a life of travel was for me and whether or not I could actually take my writing business, my freelance writing business with me. And of course, it actually worked out because here I am, 10 years after that trip, and I'm back in Mexico. I decided that I wanted to make Mexico my permanent home because what I really would like, after bopping around for the last 8 years, I'm kind of tired. There's just some, like, you can make certain places comfortable, for as long as you're going to be there. But in the back of your mind, it never really becomes your home. Like I lived in Rwanda for 3 years. And I loved Rwanda. Beautiful country, beautiful people. And I miss my apartment. I miss, if you ever saw my Rwanda apartment videos or just the videos of my view and the sunrise on one side of the apartment, and then on the second balcony, I had another view of the sunset. Freaking fabulous. I had three balconies altogether. I love that apartment. But I lived there for 3 years. And then I thought that was going to be my home, but there was a certain point where I felt like it was too far. Um, I felt like it was too far away from what it is that I felt like I needed to accomplish. And so Mexico became my first choice. And so far, I've been here for 2 years, and I do love being here. I like being here on this side of the planet. Um, I like, I'm going to say this, I like being around, um, there's access to Black culture here and a little bit in Mexico. It's not the same as, it wouldn't be the same. It's not the same as what we would recognize in the States, but there are other parts of Latin America that I would really like to explore, other parts of the Black African diaspora, um, to be able to get to know that more. And being, I like, I like being living in a place where there's a Black African diaspora that I can attach myself to. Um, And Africa can always be some place that I can go back and go to, like there's certain festivals and there's certain cities and you know art festivals and things that I want and fashion festivals that I want to be able to go back to be able to visit, particularly in Nigeria. I'm thinking about Nigeria and South Africa. Um, but I like as a Black person, as an African American who is a descendant of enslaved Africans from the who lived in the United States. I like living in the diasporic part of the Americas. Um, so yeah, that's part of the reason why. But I want to go to Guanajuato. That was the point that I was getting to. Where is it? Because I said I wanted to go to San Miguel de Allende. I don't think that I'm supposed to go there. I'm supposed to go back to Guanajuato. And Guanajuato was one of the two cities that I visited back in 2016. Um, I went to Querétaro for 2 weeks, and then I went to Guanajuato for 2 weeks, and I absolutely fell in love with the place. There is something about a view. I love a good view. Just about every place that I have lived over the last 8 years has had an absolutely fabulous view, with the exception of the place that I live in now in Playa del Carmen. Um, but in Guanajuato, San Miguel does too. But Guanajuato, there's a part of there's like a, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a bowl, and it has like this valley of homes that are just you know beautiful with all the colors and you know, and it's concrete homes that are built on top of mountains and things like that. Um, and s- Surrounding that bowl is a group of mountains. And I learned from my travels that I really love being able to have a view of either a sunrise or a sunset. Either one of those would be beautiful for me. Um, but I really love mountains, even more so than I love the sea too. But at least in Mexico, beach can more serve as a place um, for vacation. I don't need to like not at least not in Mexico. If I was living in Asia, like if I lived back in Vietnam, then yes, I would be living in Da Nang. I absolutely love Da Nang when I lived there. It's a beautiful beach, beautiful place to be. I absolutely loved my time in Da Nang. But here, I don't love it so much. At least not in Playa del Carmen. Um, at least not to, and also not to live. So Guanajuato, I think would be a better place for me, just because I love the authenticity of the place. It has a lot of youthful energy because there's a university. It's a university town. The city itself is beautiful. It's a university town. It's got some beautiful places to live. My God, some beautiful places to live that are not 2,500 US dollars per month to live in. Um, that's important to me because I just didn't, you know, do what you want to do, but I didn't come to, you know, live in a brand new country so that I could pay astronomical rent. I just didn't. I'm sorry. There's other things that I could be investing my money in. So Guanajuato, I think, would be nice for me. I don't even know if there's much of a Black community there. I'll be honest with you, I'm not even concerned. I can make other, you know, other friends with local folks, with local artists. I love these earrings that I have. I'm not one for wearing long. Well, I do love long earrings, but I usually don't wear, you know, these short post earrings, and I rather like them. I want to say understated, but they're not really understated, but they're simple. I like them. Um, so yes. So the whole point of this video today was, yes, today is my 8-year travelversary. I am very excited. I celebrated with my little um, cinnamon roll this morning, and it had, I'll show you the picture again. It had, you see, the cinnamon roll has this gorgeous icing on it. I don't know if it was like a cream cheese icing. It tasted like the particular bakery that I went to. It's called Oli Bakery. It's around the corner from where I live, here in Playa del Carmen. But they have this cheesecake I think it's called Basque, Basque, and I think it's a Spanish thing. It's owned the bakery is owned by, I believe they're from Argentina. I hope I'm not right. I hope I'm not misplacing them, but they're lovely people. And they sell this cheesecake that I had once. This and it's not like it's not from cheesecake from the States. It's a different type of a cheesecake that I had never really had before. And I looked it up. I think it was called like a Basque, Basque. I could be getting all this wrong. Um, but the icing that was on it tasted much like this, and then it had like a some sort of a compote on the top, which is passion fruit. This is the passion fruit compote. You see that orange sort of golden compote on there with all of the passion fruit seeds that I love so much, and a little piece of bit of strawberry on the top. It was so good. And what I really love about this particular bakery is they don't kill everybody with the sugar. You can go to a bakery in the States and everything tastes like it's just white sugar, 2 times what than what's actually necessary to make the thing sweet. This is nice, and it's understated, it's not killing you. It's still a dessert. I didn't say it was healthy, but it's just delicious. I love it. I love it. I love fresh things, fresh ingredients. I'm not a baker. And don't enjoy baking. What I do enjoy is going to a bakery that does know how to do it well. They have really good bakery items. And I don't even go to the bakery that often. I probably go there, if I go there once a month, that might even be a lot. I might probably go there once every other month when I just felt like something extra, something sweet. Um, and I've done some of like other Mexican bakeries, but a lot of Mexican bakery products, at least from what I have experienced so far, they tend to be kind of dry. I don't know if that's just the Mexican aesthetic as far as bakery goods are concerned, but I don't particularly care for it. Um, but this place I do like. I do like their bakery items are really delicious, always fresh. So yeah, so I wanted to do for my travelversary, people always ask me what it is that I miss about the States. They want to know how is it that I could live outside of the States so long, and if there's anything about the States that I actually miss. Now, I've only been back to the States one time, and that was, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. It was towards the end of the pandemic when I was living in Rwanda. I went back to visit my family in the States, and I did my 30 days. I really haven't been back since. Um, but do I Miss America, when I think when people ask me about what it is that if I miss America, they're looking for a certain level of homesickness. I'm not homesick. I've in the past 8 years that I have been abroad, maybe in the early days that I was gone, but I learned. I've kind of have learned to be the odd one out everywhere I go. I don't necessarily need the feeling of fitting in, and also because of my experience of doing the Peace Corps in my early 20s, I experienced a lot of homesickness then. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I served in Togo in West Africa for 2 years. Um, and there, in my early 20s, of course, as a younger person, I experienced a lot of homesickness there. But at this age, I don't, which is not to say that people, just because you're older, doesn't mean that you don't experience homesickness, because people do. Doesn't really matter what your age is. Um, and I think because I kind of I knew the experience and what I needed, I knew what to expect. And I think in Togo, the environment that I was in was so different from what it is that I had ever known, that it sort of conditioned me to live in a place that's different. Like now, when I go to other countries and people are complaining about, what they don't have access to, and I'm like, dude, this ain't an African village. Like, you got stuff. You don't have to go to the river and, you know, wash your clothes at the river, and um, I wasn't carrying, and I did do my laundry, but I wasn't carrying water back and forth, from the pump down the road. I had a young lady that would do it for me. I, paid her some money so that she could bring water to my house, just to be able to have the experience of water, because there was no plumbing in the house. Like that is an experience where that is completely different, and you're going to experience homesickness. All this other stuff that people complain about, you know, they can't go to the mall and get the hair products that they want. I'm like, girl, that's baby stuff. Like, get over it and find something else to complain about. But I wanted to share 5 things that I do miss about the States, because I don't think I've ever really shared that with people before. So, the number one thing that I actually do miss is my favorite state or city in the U.S., which is Washington D.C. I actually miss the city of Washington D.C. Um, what do I miss about Washington D.C.? I think everything else on my list is kind of like a subset of what it is that I lived in Washington D.C. Now, I'm originally from New Jersey, from the state of New Jersey. Born and raised in New Jersey. I lived there until I went to the Peace Corps. A couple of years after college, I graduated from Rutgers University in Newark, New Jersey. Um, so that's like 20 some odd years of living in New Jersey. And then after Peace Corps, I moved to Washington, D.C. and wound up doing, like, I think I was there about 10, 12 years. Um, and it just felt, DC always felt like, well, I should say this. Living in New Jersey, I had a lot of access to New York City. And so, New York City is, this sprawling metropolis. Um, and I love New York too, but I don't like living there. I did live there for a very short stint, and I didn't love it. I can visit, but don't really need to be there permanently. And when I moved to DC, it was really nice because it had all the benefits of a large city without the sprawling metropolis. It's large enough to be able to handle it. Um, and then at the same time, DC it's a city, but it also, like, there's parts of it that has sort of like a southern charm to it, I would say, particularly if you lived or have spent some time in the southeast area of Washington D.C. And speaking to the people there, a lot of the people there were people who had come from places like South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and things like that. Um, and so that was nice to be around. Certainly around Maryland. Um, uh, I did live in Maryland too, but I'm sort of wrapping it all into the same bubble. Um, but yeah, I loved DC. I loved being in a largely Black city. I don't know what it looks like now. I ain't been there in a while. Gentrification is a real thing. But DC has always been this really just a beautiful, beautiful place. I loved being able to go to parts of the city where they had all of the embassies and people from different countries who had their embassies, and then the ambassadors from the embassies of each country, and to be able to go to places, see these beautiful homes and parks. um, I talked about Southeast DC. um, I got into a lot of the bookstores, and being able to have easy access to um, vegan restaurants. I was never really vegan in Washington, D.C., but I got introduced to a lot of lot of really great health information um, in Washington, D.C. And I'm not a vegan now, um, although there have been times in my life where I have stuck to a largely vegan diet for various reasons. I'm going to do a different video about that on another day. Um, but yeah, DC is such an interesting state. Now, other things that I miss living in the United States, things that are also related to being in Washington D.C. is the festivals, particularly in the summertime. A lot of Black festivals. Like it felt like in the weekend, every weekend you can go and there was some sort of a festival happening somewhere in any of the four parts of the city. The four parts being Northwest, Northeast, Southwest, Southeast. Always something for you to be able to get into. Um, and just being able to relax and enjoy the day with other Black people. Um, and we're a very eccentric, yeah, eccentric group of people, and we can be boisterous, and have a good time and eat good food, and then, there's a way that we sort of compliment one another when we're outside, and I miss that. I do miss that. If I could just fly in for a weekend to enjoy a good festival, I think that would be time well spent. I ain't gonna be staying too long, but for a good festival in DC, um, I would really enjoy it. So the festivals. Next is the museums, particularly the Smithsonian. I absolutely love the Smithsonian, and I kind of went to all of the various. I went to all of the museums that were in the Smithsonian, and there were a few of them that I would go to. I'd be lying if I could give you the name of the one, but there were a couple of them I would go in, and this was even before I was, could considered myself to be an artist, or at least a budding artist. I would sit in, bring a journal, and I would write, and I would draw some of the sculptures, the paintings and things that I would see just kind of for fun. Like I would, if I had a few extra dollars, I would sit in the museum cafe and eat something, or I would just like bring a little sandwich or something with me. And, or to be able to go out onto the lawn and there's, various places that had lawns, and you can bring a blanket, a book, again in the summertime. And like it was a good day. It really was. There were certain places that I remember that had, plots of flowers and, rose bushes and just a purposeful place to relax and unwind. And you can enjoy it whether you had money or you had no money. You had access to the same level of beauty that everybody else had. Um, and that's not true everywhere in the United States. So this is very specific to the city of Washington, D.C. So I really love the city of D.C. I love festivals, and I love the Smithsonian Museum. I have not been to the what people call the Blacksonian, the African American Museum. I have not been there, but I need to go. I do need to go. What's next? One, two, three, four. The fourth thing that I really love and miss about the United States, and this could probably apply to a lot of the places that I've lived in. I've lived in DC, I've lived in Maryland, I've lived in Florida, and of course I said I grew up in New Jersey. I did a couple of years in Massachusetts for grad school, but this ain't really gonna apply to Massachusetts. Uh, It's the access to the variety of cultures, to a large variety of cultures in one place. This don't apply to Massachusetts, really. There's cultures there, but it ain't comfortable. If you are a Negro in Massachusetts, I feel sorry for you. If you're a person of color in Massachusetts, I have no idea why you would stay there. Um, but in the larger cities, it's just really nice to have access to different types of cultures in one place. And I actually miss that when I travel around. I also value going to countries where that I learned about in one of those, in one of those cities. Like I learned about originally learned I learned how to eat pho from Vietnam in Florida. I lived up the street from a very small shopping mall that they called I think it's Little China. They called it Little China, and it was more than just Chinese people. It was a large group of Asian people, but there was like a Chinese bakery. There was different Asian banks and grocery stores, and there was a Vietnamese place that I actually went to, never even thinking that I would ever spend some time um, in Vietnam. But I learned how to eat pho there. I went in there by myself one day, um, and I had no idea what the hell I was ordering. And it was clear to the gentleman that was sitting near me, Vietnamese gentleman, and he told me the process. He told me, okay, this is what you order. He said, you order it. You're gonna add, the beef slices to the hot scalding soup. And of course, it had, the greens that you added to it. The fresh basil, holy basil, the bean sprouts, and then you mix it with the hoisin sauce and the sriracha sauce, and you eat that, and it was absolutely delicious. I absolutely fell in love with pho, and then I would go there a few times a month, because it was such a good deal on such good food, and I love that. I love that about the United States. in Washington D.C. I had access to, Washington D.C. has a really beautiful Ethiopian community with a good number of Ethiopian restaurants, and so I learned how to eat Ethiopian food in Washington D.C. I had Brazilian. I don't know what you would call it. It's like would you call it Brazilian barbecue? I haven't been to Brazil yet, but I'm looking forward to going to Brazil now that I live on this side of the planet. Um, but you know how they do? I don't know. Is it? I don't know if what do you call it in English? Is it barbecue? But you go in and they have like a big buffet of salads and all sorts of things that you can get full off of just on the buffet. Everything everything you can imagine is on that buffet. And then there's people who walk around with different types of meats, with I don't know, steaks, skirt steaks. They have pork items and different types of beef, and depending on where you go, you might get access to things like alligator. Um, that was true. I had that in Florida because I lived in Orlando, and Orlando has a pretty significant Brazilian population there. So there were a couple of Brazilian restaurants that I would go to sometimes that were actually really nicely priced. Um, and then, of course, growing up, there was, Italian delis, Jewish delis. Um, I miss sandwiches. I miss a good sandwich. Like you can go to probably anywhere in the world and find a type of a sandwich, but it never really tastes like what you can get in the United States. And I miss that. I miss sandwiches. We can probably put that and make that its own category. That could be the bonus. That's good. That's the bonus. I miss sandwiches from the United States. But just having access to a large variety of cultures, I was introduced to the world through food. I was introduced to the world of cultures through food. And it's because of all the immigrant communities that I grew up around, because I had the advantage of living in bigger cities where you were more than cities that attracted a lot of immigrants. And so I'm grateful for having that experience. Um, Sandwiches, I'm gonna put that on there. I actually miss a good sandwich. And also the last one is hair. Now let's see. Today, right now, I got my hair sort of twisted up, and because it's hot as hell. I don't know what the actual temperature is, but it always feels like it's at least 100 degrees plus when you go outside, particularly in the middle of the day here in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. God bless it. I can't be bothered with this type of heat anymore. So I stay inside for the most part. Um, but it's not the hair products that I miss. I have long learned to be able to create my own products, or I'll just make do with what it is that I could find. And the reason is, I like, people are saying that they need to be able to travel with their certain hair products. Um, I don't always find, like, I had a certain set of hair products that I think worked for me. This is the way it always goes. I have a certain set of hair products that work for a time, and then I guess your hair gets used to it and it doesn't work anymore. And so, you chuck those in and you move on to something else. But I know a lot of women, Black women in particular, who are, they like they hold on to the products, and they're using them for years. And here's what do what you need to do for your hair, and do what makes you feel beautiful. This is not a comment on, I'm not trying to rag on someone's hair routine. Um, But what I don't think that people factor into their hair is that your hair will react differently to different types of weather, to different seasons, to what it is that you're eating in a particular country. So whatever products that you were using back in the States may not always work. And I think because of being a Black American and having a history of not always having access to um, the hair products that you may feel like you might need to again make yourself feel beautiful in the way that you desire to feel beautiful. Um, it's like you find the one thing and it's like they want to use it forever. Um, and I'm saying this particularly for people who are not as comfortable with their natural hair um, as others. Again, this is not I'm not ragging on anybody's decision on what to do with their hair. You do what makes you feel beautiful. Um, but I think it's because I've worn my hair natural since I was 18 years old. Um, and people probably look at my hair now and they're like, oh, but you have a certain hair texture. My hair has gotten softer over the years. I think it's just a perimenopause thing. But when I was younger, my hair used to be a lot a lot thicker than what it is. Like these days, my hair is fairly easy to be able to comb. This is just a simple, twist all the way down. It's enough to be able to make it neat, and it doesn't take me a long time to be able to do my hair. Um, because I had cut my hair down. I cut my hair down when it started to get hot. I tend to do this, and I really don't want to do this anymore. Um, but I did, and I kind of regret it. But it's kind of starting to grow out now, and it's kind of like in that in between phase where if I leave it out, it's like I don't really like what it looks like, but I do like the way that it looks like twisted up. But one of the things that I need is a good trim, a good cut. For the past 8 years, I've been just sort of cutting my own hair, and I don't like that. And I don't trust folks who don't have experience with Black hair. And you would think, because I spent 3 years on the continent of Africa, Rwanda in particular. Let me be specific about where I was, because Africa is a big place, of course. But living in Rwanda, there's just not a lot of people who are they're not well trained. I'll be honest. A lot of them are not as well trained as you would like them to be. So I'm not like people will go. God help them. People will go to a particular hair salon or hairstylist or hairdresser, however you want to call them, and you've got to give people instructions on how to do a basic wash. Like I'm not paying you. I'm not going to pay you cash so that I have to talk you through how to do a hair wash. I'm just not. I'm not going to talk you through paying you money to talk you through doing a hair wash. So I never got my hair done by a so-called professional while in Rwanda. I love you, and there were people who do some really beautiful braiding. Like you can go around Rwanda and see Rwandan women who are absolutely beautiful women, and you will see a lot of people with braids. However, I don't do braids where you have to add in extra hair. I did that once. I did that a couple of times in my teens, and I just never did it again because I did not like how I felt like it dried out my hair and it screwed up my edges. Um, made my edges thin out, and I was like, I'm never doing these braids again. So I always have always just like if I did braids or if I had someone else do the braids, it was always with my own natural hair. And so, I don't know. I want to be able to grow my hair out I want to be able to wear my hair out again. Um, because I think that's just the way that I look the best. I also like this braided up style, which is really nice, I think, for the hotter months. But particularly once I get to be able to move to Guanajuato, where the the climate, the temperature of the place is a bit different. The air is a little drier, and it's not as hot. Not as hot. You know, it's basically nice spring days for the most part in Guanajuato, and then at night it gets cooler. Hallelujah! I can't wait. I cannot wait. But I do, you know, as far as what I miss from the United States, I miss being able to go and get a good haircut or a good hair trim. If I could find somebody who can do African American hair that I could trust, that would come out very nice. Because I tell you, I'm sitting here. This is what I'm using to cut my own hair. Can you see that? This is what I'm using to cut my own hair. This is just regular old art scissors. I got them from the art store. I think I got that one from in Rwanda. I bought that from the art supply section of one of the bookstores that I used to go to. And that's not right. I'm using trash, you know, I mean, it's a great pair of scissors, but I'm using trash materials to cut my own hair. This is ridiculous. I really like if I could just, you know, one of these days I'm gonna have enough money to just be able to fly in, spend 3 or 4 days, get all the stuff I need to get done, have, you know, some good food. I'm gonna get myself a sandwich, some Ethiopian food, maybe do a little bit of clothing shopping, um, get my hair cut in the way that I need to be cut, and head on back to Guanajuato. That's the life I'm calling in for myself. So those are my 5 things. My 5 things that I miss the city of Washington D.C. I miss festivals. I miss the Smithsonian Museum. I miss living in cities where I have access to a variety of cultures, immigrant communities in one place. I miss having a good haircut. And as a bonus, I really miss eating sandwiches. Sandwiches, different types of sandwiches, the Philly cheesesteak, um, going to bodegas, and getting like a you know, like a bacon, egg, and cheese. Not that I would eat any of this stuff every day. Um, when I was growing up, you know, just getting like a sub sandwich um, with like smoked turkey and provolone, and you know, some of the countries that I've been to, they have a Subway, and the Subway is always just as gross in the in the other countries as I remember them being in America. You know, so it's always a disappointment. Um, so yeah, what else? Yeah, the Philly cheesesteak, going to the Jewish delis or the Italian delis in New York City. I miss those. Who else has a good sandwich? I don't know, but there was all sorts of sandwiches. A good barbecue sandwich, a good fish sandwich, you know, all sorts of sandwiches. I miss a good hot dog. Again, I don't need any of this stuff every day. I didn't eat this stuff every day when I lived in the States either. But every once in a blue moon, it's just nice to be able to sit down and, you know, go to the place where you know that that's what they do. Like that's what they do here. You know, I would really just love a bodega sub. Just give me, you know, just one day I could have a nice bodega sub and be done with it and go on. I probably wouldn't need it for another year. So yeah, so that's my story for today. What do I have going on? Check out my Substack. my Substack. I'm about to put up um, a story that I just wrote. I've been writing a lot of personal essays lately, and I'm really fatigued with the process of pitching for magazines. As I don't know if you can hear these folks outside, um, but they broke my concentration. But my Substack, I was talking about. I have been thinking about how things are changing. I still pitch magazines, and I still think that pitching magazines is a useful thing for folks to do. And I will continue to teach it. I'll probably teach another class in the fall. I don't have the brain space to do it for this summer, but in the fall, I might consider doing a 3 hour workshop. Um, Pitching magazines is a useful thing, but I think you know some years ago when people were sort of like magazines was kind of like the only place for you to be able to go to get your writing out into the world. It's just frustrating. Magazines are very slow. Um, the pay is minimal. Um, and then, you know, they take forever to freaking pay you. They act like you didn't write an article and they freaking publish the freaking thing. And then when you ask for your paycheck, it's like, you know, we'll get it to you when we get it to you. And it's like, and they're making money off of your published work. You know, they've got ads going and whatnot. So it's not like, you know, it's a broke, you know, independent publication. These are, you know, big, you know, magazines. However, I do think it's good to be able to have your name connected to larger publications. That still means something today because it means that you've gone through a particular you've gone through a particular um, set of eyes, set of editors who sort of stamp you as you know this person is a writer. Not that other people aren't writers, and I want to be clear about that. If you choose for whatever reason to not write for other people, that does not mean that you're not a writer, you're a fake writer, or you're posing as a writer. You are a writer. We're all writers. Um, but you don't have to go through that if you don't want to. And so just been really loving Substack as a place for me to be able to sort of organize myself and decide what kind of a writer I want to be. And also to be able to support other writers, to be able to support other writers in the work that they want to be able to do. And so, and in doing that, I've supported people privately who want support with the magazine articles that they are writing. I've helped people who are starting their own Substack and they want to talk to me about how what the direction of the work that they want to be able to create. I mostly focus on memoir and personal essays, telling personal stories, and you know, finding meaning in your life story and sharing that. What is the story? Because there's many stories that you can probably tell, but what's the main story that you can tell in your work? Is what is I'm looking for women who want to be able to do, and men. I would also work. I haven't worked with men yet, um, at least not in a uh, paid way. Um, but I have worked with women, particularly women who are 40, 50 years of age and older. Because usually by this age, and I'm 49, by this age, you've lived enough life to be able to see, um, how you've lived, who are the people who have, you know, put put their effort and energy into helping you become who you are as a person. And then there's a point where you make a conscious choice to live the life that you want to be able to live. And you say, you bless the people who have added to your life, whether those things were good or bad. I think there's a point, you probably spend your younger years hating a certain person because of how they treated you or even maybe even abused you. Um, but you get to a certain point in your life where of acceptance, and you start to learn that that part of your life has added to the person that you are today. And there was a really good clip that I saw today of Monica, the singer Monica. I think she got some sort of an award or something while she was at the Essence Festival, and she was talking about her dad recently passed away, and I felt her heart in the piece, the small piece of the speech that I heard her give. Just how much because I've been a fan of Monica since she was a teenager, and I don't know how old she is, probably somewhere in her 40s. Um, but she talked about how her father contributed to how strong she is as a person, um, but even to how it is that she's able to be a lot softer now in her life. And it was just really, I was so happy for her to be able to share that. And I bring that story up. I think I'll probably share it if I can find it again. I'll share it on my Substack. But I love stories like that of how women have changed and are changing. Um, and just making a documentation of that. That story needs to be told. And I think I'm so obsessed with this because of my example of my own mother. My mom died when she was 49 years old of breast cancer. And she lived, she suffered through a lot of things in her life. And I think just as she was beginning to get to a point where um, that change in a woman was just starting to kick in, she was unfortunately taken away. And that I never got to see that in her. Um, and so I always felt like I missed out on, so like there was a certain key to womanhood that I missed out on because I didn't get to experience watching my mother go through perimenopause and menopause and things like that. And how that sort of would change her from the younger woman that she was when she had me. She had me like in 19, 20 years old, I think. Um, and how that, the shift that a person makes when they get older. I am able to see that in my father. My father, how old is my dad? My dad is 70, 71-ish. And I enjoy watching him evolve at his own pace. I have such admiration for my dad. I do. That I did not, I'll be honest, I didn't have it. I didn't have space for that when I was, 20, 25. I didn't have space for that. But at 49, I do. Um, and so I'm grateful for life. And I really think that we should all spend time documenting this process so that other women and men can read it and, take your wisdom. We all have some sort of wisdom that we were brought here to be able to share with people. And so if you want to be able to write it out, I am the person who can support you in doing that. Now, at the moment, what I am doing is I am working with people who have already written something. They've already written a manuscript. If you've written something that's a good, 50, 100 pages, even 200 to 300 pages, and you need a professional eye, I am doing professional manuscript reviews. You can check out the link in the description. You'll have access to my email address as well as to my Substack. You can check out my work there, as well as some of the other work that I have written for other magazines and other places. And if you want to be able to work together, you can check out the information and you can set up a session. The way manuscript reviews work, and this is only for people who are doing nonfiction, particularly memoir. If you're doing memoir or you're writing, something that has a personal story attached to it, even if you're writing a book, like for your business, and it includes your personal story, I can support you with that. And you'll be able to find that information in the description box. And I was explaining how a manuscript review works. You send me what you have. Usually, if it's in a Google Doc, that's great. I take some time to be able to read it. It usually takes me a good 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes a month, depending on how many I have going on at one time. And I read it, and then I give you written a written review of what it is that I've read, and then I will include what is working well, what needs to be improved, and what your most logical next steps are in trying to take this big manuscript and getting it to the finish line. Or, it really depends. Some people are not even ready for the finish line yet, but they do need somebody to help them to move it to whatever their particular next step is. So that you can get closer to actually publishing your book and having it available for your people to be able to read. It does cost. It's not a cheap process, but it is well worth it. It's a process that is well worth it. And so all that information is available in the description box. You'll have access to that there. So again, my name is Halona Black. I am a writer as well as a memoir coach. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.